Welcome to the Ideal Investor Show. This is the podcast where we help you challenge your mindset and discover where you are. Tired of stories about other people's success? We can help you change your life, determine your time freedom point, and join us on the journey to financial success. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Ideal Investor Show, where we bring you great people to talk to and listen to and engage with and learn from. And we do that again today with a little bit of a twist, because normally we have people with all kinds of investing background and accounting experts and so forth. And today we have a friend, I would say. Jason, I hope you agree that we could consider each other's friends. So Jason Freeman is with us. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Axel.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason and I actually got to know each other in the San Diego area, but we are currently both not there anymore. So Jason, tell us a little bit, how did you end up where you are now, and what have you done recently, and what are you doing these days?
Thanks for having me. First, I want to go back a little bit briefly, if that's okay.
Totally.
Well, way back to when I was born. All of us get problems and circumstances in life and challenges to overcome, and I wanted to get started right away, I guess, because when I was born, my umbilical cord got kinked like a garden hose.
Okay.
So way off the bat, I have a little life and death challenge going, and it's affecting everyone. And then the result of that was I lived by a miracle, but I developed a pronounced speech impediment and some coordination differences. For much of my life, I thought that this was a problem I could not overcome. And I thought I was the only one dealing with a disability.
Right.
I kind of laugh about it now, because the thing about the problem of my disability is I wasn't actively looking for solutions, looking for ways to make it different, looking for ways to experience it differently, which made it seem insurmountable. And also, for the record, Axel, I'm not the only one with a disability.
Yeah.
It's a huge segment of the world population, 1,300,000,000 people. That leaves me in good company.
Yep, absolutely. I would agree. I mean, the numbers, we can probably all see them and read statistics about them. What I find so fascinating, and why I've always felt we have somehow a connection, is that some people, in my opinion, basically their whole identity becomes their disability. And I always felt, yeah, you have it, but that's just basically a side note. That's not really Jason. Jason is a different person than just that impediment. Jason is Jason, and Jason is doing and developing into what he wants, and not what the disability maybe makes it harder to accomplish.
And I empathize so deeply with all the people out there who identify with the disability right now, because for much of my life, that was my life. And even someone listening who doesn't have a disability as a challenge can probably relate, because maybe someone thinks the financial situation will never change, or like they have some pain in their body and they feel that'll never change, or any number of things. It is so empowering, though, to figure out how to start working with the circumstances in our lives, and start taking new steps and practicing new skills. Whatever the challenge is, it's so empowering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think you took it, at least that little glimpse through the window that I have had so far, to a level that really requires courage and a certain amount of bravery. Because I mean, you could have said, okay, well, I can be an accountant and I can work well with numbers and spreadsheets and stuff like that. But when we got to know each other, you were on the journey towards public speaking, which is probably really one of the bigger challenges. So was there a particular trigger or something that made you think, here I am, Jason Freeman, I become a public speaker, let's go?
I think actually it was a voice within me that just wouldn't leave me alone. And that was very clear. And so I kept ignoring it. I kept finding ways to do other things. But then I finally thought, no, I want to do this. And then the huge turning point in my mindset, Axel, was I was having a conversation with my friend Ina Lucas, and I must have been kind of complaining, well, if I had been born normally, if I was speaking normally, if, and Ina turns to me and says, Jason, your voice is a gift. And I'm like, what? What? That's not my identity. My identity is hating this part of my life. But once I started thinking of it a bit differently, new options started opening up and new solutions started opening. And nothing actually happened overnight. Nothing.
Yeah, but that's for everyone.
What?
I think that's true for everyone in every situation. I like the term mastery quite a bit in the context of starting a journey towards a goal, right? I mean, there are different stages. This comes maybe a little bit from my upbringing and original first half of my life in Germany, where the vast majority of people, they get out of school. During school, they can do some practica and stuff like that to kind of feel out what they might be interested in. And then they typically apply for an apprenticeship. And hopefully the apprenticeship is in an area that they are somewhat passionate about, or they know from their upbringing or their family, like farming, for example, or woodworking or electrical stuff or computers, or whatever it might be. And that is the beginning of this journey to say, okay, I'm an apprentice, and then they get to the journeyman stage. And ultimately in the German system, you can get to what's called a master stage, which means you are, if you reach that level, allowed to train other apprentices. And then there is one level beyond, that's the mastery, which is you're not just qualified to train other people, but you are acknowledged by other masters as really having accomplished something special, right? Something that differentiates your abilities from other people's abilities, right? And, physically, every action has a reaction, and you have to work your way through those until you get to mastery.
That's so well said, so well said. And there's another part of culture, at least in the United States, that is kind of this idea of getting rich quick and winning the lottery or something like that. And I'm all for wonderful things happening and good luck and that happening, but I eventually discovered that I couldn't rely on those things happening to make my life, that I needed to pursue mastery of something and be an apprentice. And in some ways, the apprenticeship never seems to end. But I realized that keeps me much more grounded, and it's fascinating because I'm constantly growing and constantly learning new things, and so when I speak, like I spoke to middle schoolers a few weeks ago, and they absolutely loved it. So now by practicing all the things I practice behind the scenes. When I get on stage, I can be confident and really available to give my best to the audience so they can get the most they can get.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And thank you for sharing that, Jason. I think one of the aspects to learn when you transition, for example, from apprenticeship to journeyman, or from journeyman getting closer to the master stage, is when you take a moment and think back at all the things that you're now doing because you know that they are necessary, and all the things that you're now avoiding because you know that they should be avoided, and compare that when you started the apprenticeship. And at some point you will even for yourself have to say, okay, maybe it's the journeyman now, or maybe I can finally, well, I could, by all the things I know and do, teach others to be better than they were when I started, right? That's for me a little bit the definition of when do you get to the early stages of mastery, is when you can confidently say, what I know, if I were telling other people who want to go on that journey, they would benefit by avoiding some of the mistakes, which is what I basically do in the investing field. I call that mentorship, others call it master stage, is sharing what works in my experience and tell people to avoid the things that I had to learn, sometimes expensively, what doesn't work. I want to go back to this point. You said, Ines said you have a gift. Can you expand a little bit on, did she ever tell you what that means or what it means for you today?
So she might have said something at the moment, but since she said that, which probably 12 years ago, I've been constantly learning more about using my voice as a gift. Like being in middle school is, I don't know how it was for you, but for me it was immensely challenging, and now I can use this voice, the same one that I used to despise, to reach those kids in a unique way. And of course it's not just the voice, it's my message and how I convey it and the humor and how I relate, but the voice is part of it. That's recognizing a gift and a challenge, and then not only recognizing it but using that gift. And
Okay.
it's so fun. It's really exhilarating, actually.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you can say that. And if you had to describe what you believe is important to build a relationship, both initially if you're making a speech with the audience, or a relationship for somebody to actually follow what you're saying when you're actually on stage, what do you think are the kind of like 3, 4 most important things for creating that relationship?
I think it is being relatable. If I got on that stage and in either way talk down to my audience, or else got on the stage and I have a speech impediment, I don't have much to say. I mean, it is hard to build a bridge in either case. So I can get on stage now and tell stories of struggle, but also tell them with confidence, tell them with the perspective I have now. So, and that builds a bridge because everyone has challenges. The next thing I would encourage is, and I use all the time, is to be gently humorous. People love it when I make gentle jokes about myself, not putting myself down, but not being all serious about being, I am Jason and you have to take me seriously because I take me seriously. But like if I make a mistake on stage, which happens quite a bit, I acknowledge it and we all laugh about it because it's funny. like after all my preparation that I made a mistake. So people love that builds bridges, and then also this is so important, being curious about other people. Like it's not a one-way street when I'm up there. Like me giving the audience information for them to learn, I'm also curious about them, and I ask questions during my presentation, and people we respond to that genuine curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can absolutely envision this. I think there are a few more things that you might not be willing to say out loud, so I'm not shy to say them out loud. I think one of the or some of the components for building that relationship is that I think almost all of us, and I have not met anybody who wouldn't acknowledge that, when we put ourselves in a circumstance where, for example, we are attending a speech or a presentation by Jason Freeman, where relatively soon it is almost unavoidable to say, could I do or would I do what Jason is doing? Right. And one way to be motivated, and one way to take action, and one way to be willing to consider change is inspiration, at least in my view. Right. And so when you are on the stage and when you are speaking, I think there's part of your gift is this built-in inspirational component, because you're doing it anyway, not because you have to, but because you made the choice to do it. Right. So that inspirational part, the way I understand it, is that it requires people to listen, to pause, make space, and listen, actively listen. We have so many examples where, people speak to us like a rapid fire machine gun, and because they train to be super, super clear, it kind of hammers in your brain. And I think we've all, to some extent, found ways to tune that out. But when you speak, people need to stop, make space, and listen. And I think that's a great gift, and it may be even helpful for you to get your message across, because there is a little bit more attention than would potentially otherwise be with other people. So that's just my interpretation, in addition to what you said to the gift. So maybe you can take that on board as an additional acknowledgement that it's special what you're doing.
I'm grinning from ear to ear because it's so awesome. You're interviewing me, and I'm taking notes as you're talking. It's so awesome. Thank you. And in those two things you mentioned, I can see as you mention them that they're two very major things. But it's so interesting. Sometimes we are so close to ourselves that we don't realize parts of what we give the people around us. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you would agree, and almost all the people that I've interviewed over the years would agree, that ultimately when we want to do something, we can latch on to a concept. That's one thing. But it is, in my opinion and experience, easier to latch on maybe to a concept that is associated with a person, something like along the lines of a role model, right? And for that, to have somebody who, for example, does public speaking, I think I'm going to say it anyway. I didn't want to say it originally when we set up for this, but there are actually have been a couple of studies. I think one of them is from Harvard, and a few other people who interviewed large number of people about what are the worst things you can imagine happening to you. And public speaking came often number one before dying of cancer or stuff like that, right? For people to imagine to be on a stage. And even though it's not daily conversational content, I'm sure a lot of people, especially when it's a larger event or a larger audience or a larger room, could not imagine themselves, even under the best of circumstances, to be on stage and speaking and presenting. So that inspirational component is, I believe, sometimes underestimated, especially among people who basically make it part of their profession, right? Because you're constantly surrounded by people who are doing it too. So it doesn't necessarily appear to be that special, but you go in the audience and say, hey, you want to come up here and do the thing that I'm doing, and you will have a super, super hard time finding anybody, right? So that inspirational component, I think, is important. And I want to use that a little bit as a bridge to what kind of a mindset does it take, Jason, to do what you're doing now? And how has it changed over the years?
Great question. Part of the mindset is that practice matters. I'm practicing all sorts of things. I have a meditation I practice each morning. I practicing creativity. I practicing speaking. I'm constantly practicing and innovating my organizational skills, and and practice matters. Sometimes, like, I did this all the time in the old days. Like, I would pick up something like a musical instrument, and if I couldn't get it right away, I would say, "Oh, I'm not good at this. I'm not cut out to do this." So just knowing that practice matters gives me a context for constantly practicing and constantly improving what I do, and that's just huge. And I mean, we've covered this before, but now I'm constantly searching for solutions rather than being stuck and thinking problems are unsolvable.
Right, absolutely. And when you say you practice a lot for certain things and skills and so forth, what would you say is the outcome of the practice?
The outcome of the practice is transformational. Like, this is my book, but when I started writing in high school, writing was a horrible struggle, and writing took hours, and then it filled me with stress. I wanted to do it, but it was a pretty miserable process. Nowadays, after writing on an almost daily basis for years and years, writing's one of the most enjoyable things I do. I'm writing each day. I'm always coming up with new content. But that took thousands upon thousands of hours of practice.
Right.
Maybe tens of thousands. I have no idea. I didn't keep track.
Yeah, right. What I'm getting at is, and I think you described it beautifully, you grew, in my opinion, and probably you would agree, you grew into the ability of writing, and you are still growing into a better and better speaker, and you're growing into all kinds of other abilities and towards mastery. And that is very well aligned when we talk in mindset. I'm still always referring back to Carol Dweck's book, which is literally titled Mindset, and it compares growth mindset with what she called fixed mindset, right? And you can be fixed in your belief that you basically in the situation that you're in and probably not responsible for whatever that situation is, and you're stuck in it, and now you have to let the world basically do whatever the world does to you. Or alternatively, you can take action, like you said, you can take 10,000 hours, learn writing, 20,000 hours to be a presenter and public speaker, and whatever other things other people might do. This is what you did, Jason. Our audience members, hopefully some of them want to say, I want to work with Axel to invest in real estate or whatever else it might be, but it's a journey of growth. And I think that is something that we need to adopt. In my mindset manual that people can download if they like, I basically put the fixed state, as Carol calls it, as the victim state, and the growth state as basically the creator state. You're creating your own future, you're creating your own reality by all the things that you described during our conversation. So if you take what we discussed and you transition this into what is the message that you would give our audience, how they should come out of our interview, out of our session for today, and what can they take from it that you would like to inspire them to do?
I love how you came back to growth and growth mindset versus fixed mindset, because growth isn't just for some of us, it's for all us humans. I mean, because that's where we're from. We were born as teeny babies who could do absolutely nothing.
Right.
But between the time we were born and 10 years old, we experienced astronomical growth. I mean, in all ways. And it's about remembering that potential is within us, and doing all we can to cultivate that remembering, and waking up and going, oh, how can I grow today? Wake up, how can what skills do I want to practice to get to where I want to go? Just and we're waking up and saying, oh, yes, I have problems in my life, lots of problems in my life. What is the next step to solving those problems? Knowing that problems always can change and that there's a solution to every problem. What's the next step to solving them? Maybe I won't find the solution today. Maybe I won't find it 5 months from now. Maybe I won't find it 2 years from now, but I still can take a step towards solving it. We have so much energy within us if we direct it in a way we want to go to create better lives for ourselves. It's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So my last question before I come to the questions that don't have anything to do with our topic today, the last content question is, when you're up there on the stage and you're getting to the end of your presentation or your speech and you're getting a standing ovation, how does that feel?
It just feels amazing. It feels so wonderful. So often when we want to create something challenging in life, we get mired in thinking about how much work, pain the challenge is, instead of also thinking about that there's going to be really good parts of going through this challenge of working through it too. It's not one or the other. There's always going to be the work, but then also there's going to be a lot of goodness and good feelings too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've seen it only once, but I have to say it looked like you experienced a lot of joy when you got the acknowledgement. And that's, I think, as long as we can say on the journey of finding solutions, every so often to experience the joy as a result and acknowledgement of what we put our energy in, that becomes the fuel for going forward and do it again and get better at it and so forth, like a cycle in a way. And I want our audience to think about, how can you take some of your energy and put it into certain things that will ultimately result in this feeling of joy and accomplishment and acknowledgement. As that, I can tell you from my experience, I know I've seen it in your face when that happens. It's just like somebody refilled your battery and you can go back and do the next cycle, so to speak. So with that being said,
Running from you to you again, because really well said.
Yeah, well, thank you. So the last two questions I ask every guest, and they have nothing to do with mindset or stuff like that. The first one, Jason, is if you could meet anybody, who would it be and why?
I would want to meet Helen Keller.
Okay.
Because she was deaf and blind at a time when there was very little known about accommodations for those things. And she somehow figured out how to live an amazing life and left a huge legacy. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I would want to meet her. And
Okay, yeah, that would be cool for sure. And then you have to come back and tell us how that was and what you learned from it. And the second and last question for today is, if you had a time machine you could go anywhere, where would you go and why?
It'd be fascinating to go back to the Great Depression and figure out how people got through such a hard time. Go back to a major war and figure out how people banded together during that time. But really, I don't know that I would use my time machine because today, no, today we have the most technology, culture, everything of any time in history, and of course we have tremendous problems, but I mean there's so much we do have to solve these tremendous problems. I like living where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I said. Thank you for pointing that out, Jason. Part of the reason why I asked the question, by the way, and I'm saying this also to the audience, is for me, I think going forward, continue to evolve and finding solutions to current problems. So Jason, I think we had a really inspiring conversation today, and I want to thank you for being on the show. If people have the feeling, hey, I want to attend one of those speeches or presentations, or maybe get in touch with you, how can they do that?
awkwardlyawesome.com. Awkwardly.
Yeah, and we're gonna put that obviously in the show notes and make the links available together when the recording is published. So okay, great. Any last word, Jason, before we close?
I just so appreciate this opportunity to talk with you, and I appreciate how you're really helping people who are looking currently at the financial reality, and one way you're helping them expand that.
Yeah, thank you. That's part of the goal, and then obviously having inspirational guests like you on the show, that helps a little bit too. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.